Everyone and their uncle is building AI-powered apps. And if you want to do the same, here's the fastest way to sprinkle some AI magic into your app. Hey everyone, what's up? Simon here from galaxies.dev. And in this video, you will learn 3 different ways how you can easily add AI functionality in your application. First, we will build a simple chat with streaming interface. Second, we will use completions so you can get answers to questions quickly. And third, we will also include image generation using the latest models. On top of that, we will include how to host your API endpoints so you can actually include them in a real native application. All of this is easily possible with the Vercel AI SDK and Expo, which makes it easy to add API routes to your project. And you're gonna see how easy it is with a very simple setup to include these powerful features in your app, even if you haven't used them before. And if you want some more understanding about the apps and the things you vibe coded, check out galaxies.dev. Galaxies.dev is my personal online school with the best content I have. The Zero to Hero mission has helped hundreds of people get into React Native and build epic applications, so check it out at galaxies.dev. Use code AI to get 20% off your first, I think, 3 months. So why not get started? Galaxies.dev, code AI, and now let's build some cool functionality in here. Alright, so let's get started by setting up a new Expo application. I will use Bun for this. It doesn't really matter. Just call bunx create Expo app and give your app a name, or use yarn or npm or pnpm or whatever you fancy today. Really, I don't care. Let's go into this. I have a shortcut, so I can do see my AI app. You can also do VS Code, but I will use Cursor, as I've said many times in my other videos that I'm currently really enjoying Cursor as the AI editor of my choice. Here we go. I will try to not use most AI functionalities. However, one thing we want to do right in the beginning is we want to get rid, oh no, that's also how you can get rid of it. But I wanted to remove the default stuff that's in this app. So I will run run reset project. That's a script that you can find in your package.json. So here we go, run reset. No, I don't want to keep those files. So this will just delete all the files. And now we should have, okay, I've got the arrow today. I don't know how to change this, but then we're gonna have to live with the arrow. Here we go. We need a couple of packages to use the Vercel AI SDK because that's what we want to integrate. And they have an Expo quick start guide, so we will mostly follow this. So we've created our app. Now it's time to install a bunch of packages. Let's go back into Cursor and add these. So first of all, you want to add the AI SDK OpenAI and the AI SDK for React and Zod for some types. I will also add AI SDK Google, so we can also use some cool Gemini stuff in our application. Now, at a later point in that tutorial, we will also have to add some polyfills because some stuff is not working with Expo and React Native as it does with, for example, Next.js. And these are the scripts that we have to add. So add ungap, structured clone, and streams text encoding to our app as well, because most likely you will run into errors otherwise. Good. With that being set up, let's quickly go to the app.json. This is not entirely required for today's app, but usually if you do anything with Expo and API routes, you want to change the output here from static to server. It won't really change as we're using the Expo Go application in our case, but anyway, I think it's a good idea. Now, if you follow this, the next step is to create a local env file. I'll just drop in mine that I've prepared. So here we go. This is my one. I added 2 keys in here. I added the Google Generative AI API key and also an Open API key. Important note, these are safe because there's no Expo public in front of these URLs. Can I still change this from ScreenBrush? Now, I really would like to use just the, yeah, here we go. If I had Expo public in front of these variables, they would be bundled in my front-end application. If I don't have that, and you see I don't have it, they will only be used in the server-side environment and not bundled in our front-end application. So it's totally safe to use them in a way like this, as you will see. By the way, you can get them, simply go to the Google AI Studio and create an API key. You might have to create a new project in Google Cloud in the console, but that's not a big issue. Beyond that, you can go to OpenAI and get your API keys. I think that should be pretty clear at this point to anyone. Good. By the way, use these names, Google Generative AI API Key and OpenAI API Key, because that's what the Vercel AI SDK is expecting under the hood. Now, let's come to our first API route. I'm going to grab this actually here and then go into our app and create a new file at API/chat plus API.ts. So that generates a new API folder. I like to separate my stuff with this, and then to have an API route in your React Native project, you just have to add plus API to the end. Now what's going on in here? We have imports from the AI package, and also specifically the OpenAI model. This up here is the part that you could exchange for something else, and that we will also swap out in one of the other examples that I want to show you. But for today, or for this first example, let's go with OpenAI. We then try to get some sort of messages from our request, and then we use the stream text functionality with the GPT-4o model and the messages that have been passed to our API route. And we then return this to our client using toDataStreamResponse. So that means we have an API route that can accept messages and stream back data. And the good thing is, once you go deeper into this, here's an example for an index.ts. That code actually works. It's rare. Okay, it doesn't exactly work. Okay. Usually code you copy out from a documentation doesn't work at all, but this one kinda works mostly. There's only one problem, that this util stuff doesn't exist yet. So I will bring in a little folder with 2 files. I will add this to the root of my project. So it's up here. That means I also have to change the path here to utils/utils, and then that file should exist. Now this first utils file is to generate the API URL. The file is, by the way, in here as well. I don't take any credit for it. It's right here. What this file does, or this function does, is pretty much checking, are we running in a local environment or not? Do we have to patch anything? Have we set up any specific Expo public API base URL? Anything like that. And this just does it all in one file. And our file, or the generate API URL, will be now used all the time, as you can see right here. And we will use it many times more. Additionally, I brought in the polyfills that I talked about before. So when you run your application, you will get most likely this problem. If you experience property structured clone doesn't exist, errors on mobile at the polyfills described below. This is why we installed that fun before, and this is the polyfills file, and the polyfill file is here as well. I named this JS because I didn't want to fix the TypeScript issues, just like we all do. Okay, that's it. Quick note, I actually sometimes had really weird build issues with EAS locally and not finding this path. If that encounters to you as well, speak up in the comments. I hope I'm not the only one, or I kind of hope, because it was really nasty and it just went away for no reason during the build at some point. So anyway, we got that. We got the index file. Let's see this in action. So let's just run bunix expo and notice how we've been doing this for like, I don't know, where's my timer? Not even 10 minutes. So I will go with iOS for the iOS simulator now. And then we're going to check this out. Yeah, I want to use whatever. This is not our app. Let's get some more space here. So you can of course also run this on Android with our utils. I think it, I said no to installing the latest. I should probably do this. Yeah, please install the recommended version. I previously used a beta version of Expo. I didn't want to use a beta with you, just to give you like what's currently going on. Anyway, it doesn't matter too much if you're using Expo SDK 52 or 53. Now, again, after only 10 minutes of plugging in this, we've created an API function that can stream back results from OpenAI, and we have a very basic view. So you see here's a text input at the bottom where I can input something. And now let's talk about what's actually going on. So we have this use chat hook, which comes now from the AI SDK React bindings package. This is basically the Vercel AI SDK for React. And there are a bunch of things you can get from this hook and other hooks that we will use later. Right now, we get these messages, which we can change and which we can also especially iterate. So these are like the chat messages you have with AI. Then we have an error. We also have handle input change and input and handle submit. These three are tied currently to our text input. So on change, we would always call the handle input change. We have the value set to this input variable, and on submit editing, so if you press return or enter, it will call the handle submit function. So that means, can I also make sure that this actually stays up? We can't. So that means that we are pretty much putting the whole state of our text input field into the Vercel AI SDK with these input, handle submit, and handle input change. So it's completely managed for us, which I definitely enjoy. Now, what else are we using to construct that use chat? We have fetch, in which we put a very weird line. So we're using Expo fetch, which is a specific fetch that Expo came up with a couple of versions ago. So we could also use this fetch, but they renamed it just to have this a bit clearer. So fetch as Expo fetch is now used, and because it wouldn't work like this with TypeScript most likely, yeah, we have to use this kind of ugly construct with as unknown as type of global this.fetch. For the API, we use our URL, and if there's an error, you can log the error. There's a lot more. If you go into use chat, you will see there are many more things that you could, by the way, destructure. So you see this long array. And there are also other functionalities that we could use, like unfinished, the streaming protocol. There's really a lot that we can do. But let's just try this basic version. Hey, how are you today? And let's see. Okay, property structured clone doesn't exist. It's good that this happened right now. Although I think we kind of installed this, at least I felt like this. Maybe I didn't correctly install all the things. Or I have to clear my cache. What is the command to clear your cache? Bunix expo run -- clear, something like that. Oh my. Let's just go with bun expo. It should work. It should normally work. Maybe I should just reload this correctly. How are you? Okay, a structured clone doesn't exist. Good. That's exactly the one we wanted to prevent. Let me figure this out. Okay, I don't even have to figure this out. I just got like my brain snapped and I understood what's missing. So of course we also need to load the polyfills up here. This is the missing piece. We've added the polyfills, but we still need to load them. So now, howdy, how are you? Now it should work. And here we go. We got back streaming. So how can I assist you today? Tell me about React Native. Okay, and you see, we actually have pretty decent streaming in our application working pretty much out of the box. I think this is the cleanest solution to get streaming to work with an AI in your app. And it doesn't matter if you're using GPT-4o or switch to a different model, you're gonna get this with the AI SDK so easily. So you see, like this API route, it's that easy. And the integration here with the use chat hook, it's easy as well. The view, you can do whatever you want in that view, really. So I think this is really the fastest way from starting your app to having streaming working in your React Native application. But this is only the basic. Let's talk about a couple of other things. I think it's pretty impressive what you can get in like 10 minutes of coding, especially if you combine these tools. So the Expo API routes work flawlessly, even with streaming, not just returning a JSON object, and I found this to be super interesting. However, there are a couple of things that we want to dive deeper into. Especially, we should also take a look at completions and image generations, because I know that's super popular. But before we get into that code, let's quickly also talk about persistence. The problem is that if you're creating a chatbot, most likely you want to have some sort of persistence in the chat, which means the user talked to AI, and the user wants to continue that chat the next day or in 5 days, and the context should still exist. For this, there's a handy way to do this. Pretty much, if you're starting a chat, you can or should generate an ID for that chat. And with that ID, you can also load that chat. Let me quickly just scroll to something that's good. Okay, so here you go. if you're using the use chat hook, you can pass in a chat ID, and you can also pass in initial messages. Now, the question is only where you get those initial messages from. In the example here, they're just using a little store. So in their API route, they're requesting the messages. They also save that. They have this little chat store tool, which pretty much just writes the content to a file. In reality, what you can do quite easily is, of course, you could save the chat messages and the IDs of a chat in a database like Supabase. If you then use the stream text here in your API function, you would first of all use the chat ID to retrieve the messages from Supabase, and you can then pass these messages as initial messages here to stream text, so you don't even have to collect them on the client side. You can really do all of that in the API route. So this is just a quick word on persistence. I don't want to implement this right now. I just wanted to tell you this. There's also, of course, a whole lot more about use chat and the other things that you can use. But for now, let's take a closer look at completions. Let's leave the comfort of the docs behind for a moment and go on our own. So we want to integrate completions in our app. For this, let's just put up a new API route. We're going to just call this completion plus API.ts. I want to put this right here. Now we follow pretty much the same setup like before. Only thing is that right now we're not getting messages. We will receive just a prompt. So like, what's the capital of France? Then we also don't want to use stream text. We want to use generate text. So you see there are actually quite a lot of functionalities here in the AI package. Okay, so we can already change this. We can now call generate text, and in the end I also don't want to stream that back. I just want to like return this in a default way. So let's do new response result.text, and for clarity, yes, no, we should probably await this in that case. Then we don't need to await it down here. So this is an async call. That looks a bit better. That looked kind of weird. And then, yeah, I think we can actually use text plain. We can also use application JSON, but here we go. Now, what I wanted to tell you is that we can now easily switch out our model. So instead of OpenAI, I can now easily go and say, hey, let's just use the latest Google model. I think that's actually better than what OpenAI has. And then I would replace this, for example, with a Gemini 2.5 Flash preview model. Pass in the prompt and also maybe include a little system prompt like this. You're a helpful assistant that can answer questions and help with tasks. Of course, feel free to put in your own system prompt. That is once again enough for our API route. Now we need a new file. So let's do like an ask.tsx. Okay. Let's include that ask in our index file. So in the save area view here, I will use the Expo router link component and put in a button from React Native ask. I'm gonna have to say as child to make that work. And voila, we are on the ask page. Good. So on the ask page, there's not that much we need to do. We could probably even generate this with AI. Oops, there was the wrong key. Generate a page with text input and submit button. But maybe that's even too slow for today. Maybe we should do it. Let's do it by hand. I usually do stuff like that with AI, but let's do it by hand. It's funny. So we got some state up here. So let's call this message set message. And yes, we need to import that state correctly. Now we can use the hook like before, but now we're not using the use chat. This time we will use completion from the AI SDK. Once again, we pass in the same fun we had before. So what we definitely need is the fetch and the generate API URL. So my API URL will be now API/completion. Here we go. For fetch, we once again use this, and we could also add the same sort of error message that we had before. Now, because our API route is not streaming the data back, but just returns plain text, we should also change the stream protocol here and say this is actually text that we will get back. That will make it a lot better. I also want to show you that we can kind of control this better from code. So in the previous case, we used all these things and connected this to our input fields, but I know that this is not always working. So I want to show you how you can do this from code as well. So on my ask page, I will actually only get complete, let's say complete, that is a function, and completion. That is enough for us. So let's do a little function on submit. And on submit, this function will simply call complete with our current message. So complete sends a new prompt to the API endpoint and update the completion state. That means completion is the actual result. Now, I don't want to code the view, so I will bring that in because that one's really boring. We have a little text input here, which is now using our local state messages. And whenever it changes, we use it locally. Then we have a little button down here, which calls our onSubmit. And down here, we just display our completion. So let's hit save. And here we go. This is our page. Okay, so let's see. What is React Native? I have no idea if this works, actually. I don't think so. I don't feel like it works. Let's open up some debugging here. Oh, it actually works. I didn't expect this. Okay, I don't have a scroll view here. I should probably change this into a scroll view. Then we could also scroll this. Here we go. Not the perfect padding, but we should be fine if I use a content container styling. Oops. Oh no, I removed everything. With some padding. Okay, here we go. So our completion works as well. As you can see, we've typed this up now in pretty much just 5 minutes on our own with the SDK. We have the endpoint. We could switch out for any kind of model that you could think of. You could also bring in the system prompt. You could send this to the API route. It's currently returning simple text, so nothing spectacular. But it gets the job done. If you want or need anything like this, it just works without any problems. And to highlight one more thing, let's do a simple images file. Okay, images.tsx. We will include this as well now and try to get an image from the API. So I want to include this here with another link. Okay, so then we should be able to go to the images page. Okay, here we are. And we need another API endpoint. Let's just clone this one and call this generate image.ts. In the generate image, I kind of want to show you multiple things. Let's start with the easiest way. So instead of using generate text, what we want to bring in is currently called experimental generate image, okay? So we got to be a bit careful in usage. That might change in the future. We then need to pass in a model. I want to use, once again, actually OpenAI. I mean, they're kind of like pretty much both really great at this point. But let's, for the fun of it, use the good old OpenAI .image. I think that's what we need to call. And then you can use DALL-E 3, for example. If you're a cool kid who has access to this, you can also use GPT image 1. You pass in the prompt. You can specify how many images you want. So I just want one, and I will set the size. There are just a bunch of sizes available that you can select anyway. Now, I have different ways of displaying the result. Let me show you let me show them. So here we go. If you just want to make a fetch call from your client, so if you don't want to use now for whatever reason the AI SDK, you could just return this as a base64 string like this. And honestly, this is what we're going to do because I haven't exactly figured out most of, or maybe we're going to do this. If you're using the Vercel SDK, you could do it like this. In that case, you could actually return a content type image and it should be handled nicely. If, however, you want to save some data, you would probably return this way. Now, I have a little problem with this in that it actually works. I can show you. So I gave this a try with my endpoint and it actually generated an image and I could get it in Postman. However, I wasn't able to exactly display that in my application. Therefore, I just wanted to include this. If you have enough time to figure this out and how to display this now and handle it correctly with the SDK, let us maybe know in the comments. For the moment, we will probably go with this one. So the fetch would be an easy way if you just want to use a default fetch. This will work with our SDK. Now, let's get back to the images. Where's our file? We have the completion, ask. Okay, yeah. Let's use the stuff from the ask page on the images page. And then we're going to tweak a couple of things here. I still want to use completion. I probably also want to have is loading because this could take time. We want to call generate image in this case. And on error, if something goes wrong, yeah, we can leave it like this. I want to set the stream protocol still to text because we're kind of just getting back a base64 string, and I think this should actually work like this. And the only thing is that here I will change this and I will say if is loading, then I want to have, let's do it like this. We'll just bring this in because it's like 2 lines of code. If we're loading, we're going to display an activity indicator. Otherwise, we're going to use simply the completion as the URI here. So I just need to bring an image from React Native. But the code is pretty easy. That's why I kind of want to use the SDK as much as possible. You see, we have our completion here. We have the same logic with just using the complete variable that we got up here. The complete function is used here with our local message, and completion has the value from the model. So with all of that in place, let's see. I want to stop this because I sometimes feel better if the server restarts. I don't know why. If you're the same, let me know. We can then hit reload. Let's go to image and I don't know, create a Ghibli styled image of a developer. Okay, I don't know even if I said this correct, but here we go. Okay, source URI, there's an actual error coming immediately. That is quite the good point because usually it takes like 20 seconds. So that means I messed up something. We have the API, we have messages, generate image. Okay, yeah, this needs to be plus API. Makes sense. Okay, so now with that, I actually want to have like that prompt included here. I don't want to type this all the time. Okay, so now with that in place, let's go to images, ask AI. Okay, so now it's bundled, it's using our API route. We have no logs in the API route, but it most likely takes about 20 to 30 seconds. So in your case, if you're as paranoid as I am, I would usually put in some logs here, like post called, getting result, got the result. And then also something in the images page just to know that you actually got a result. However, in our case, the only thing we can do is wait. All right, here we go. This probably took longer than 20 seconds, but we got the result. I have this perfect image. And by the way, if you're using DALL-E 3 instead in your image here, because you can't use GPT image 1, you're going to notice the difference. It's so, like, compared to this, the DALL-E image is so, it's absolute trash. Anyway, that's not the point here. We've now our own logic here. If you wanted to, again, you could use fetch. I just want to show you the code. So we would then use the additional fetch logic here, or instead of the Vercel logic. And what would change is that the onSubmit function becomes a lot longer. So you could then remove all of that and comment out this. But then you would have to do it like this. You would have to manage your own loading state. You would make a fetch request. It's pretty much the same like before, but then you get the result and you need to convert it to an image and handle the loading state. So you can do it, but I don't know why. It works pretty well with the SDK like this, so probably follow those recommendations. Okay, so before we wrap up and you can try this out on your own, there are two more important things that I want to show you. The first is very important actually, because right now we're using localhost to deploy the API routes with the Expo CLI. That means if I deploy this in a native application, in a real app and use it, my friend is using it, that's not going to work. We have to deploy the API routes somewhere, and I will show you the easiest way to do that in a second. On top of that, we also have to talk about security. There's not the perfect way, but there are things and steps that you can take. So the first point is pretty easy. We have our API routes and we can now bundle and export them in our application. So the only thing we need to do now is we have to call Bunix Expo export minus p web, not minus. Minus is German. Okay, you want to learn. If you follow all my videos in the channel, you're going to be pretty good with German at one point. But anyway, this should create an export for the web platform. We set our server, our output to server. At least I hope you did this in your app.json. Remember in the beginning, we went there to output server. And this should generate our output with the 3 API routes and generates a dist folder. Perfect. Okay, now let's deploy this. And the only thing we need is EAS deploy. That means with EAS hosting, yeah, it's still in preview. Would you like to automatically create? Yes, please go ahead. Here we go. And then this will link this to a new project that we can open. I can choose a preview URL. Yeah, whatever, just use this one. We're creating the deployment. And I'm actually not sure if my env file is deployed like this as well. I don't know exactly. I will just deploy this now to prod as well for a simple reason. Because I want to show you what you need to do in your application now that you do this. Of course, you can also deploy this somewhere else, but I don't know if anything is as easy as EAS. I don't think so. So in EAS, here's my application. I could, by the way, now manage my environment variables in here. I don't know. I probably would have to import them. We're going to see in a second. Now, my production URL is down here. And I would now take this and use this here in my app.json. So for plugins, I would now put Expo router and say origin, origin, and set this to the URL. What this changes is pretty much for all the fetch requests in our application, Expo router will automatically use this as the base URL. And I think this also works perfectly with our generate API URL. If it's not working for you, then probably you want to have to set this as Expo public API base URL. So you could easily add this now, of course, here, say this, and then use the same one. I don't know if we need this, honestly. I don't think we do. But now I've added it, so we will never know. Anyway, how can we prove that this works? Well, we can just use a different sort of tool. Let's just use Postman. So I've already shown you this from before. Let's see. I do have this one up here for the completion. I will now use the URL we just had. So my AIA. And then we're going to ask, what is galaxies.dev? I don't know if you have an answer for that AI. I don't even know which model we used, but maybe, I don't know if I ranked well. Platform designed to help developers build, deploy, and manage AI applications. Well, if we look at this video, we're definitely right. Oh, well, I have to do some more about this. But that's not the point. The point was that our API in Expo is actually hosted. You can check this out under hosting. I would see my deployments. I see that this API function was called, at least if I check like metrics, or metrics might be a bit behind, lagging behind, as well as requests, but I'm pretty sure we just did a request. At least that's what I see here. So I use this, I used completion. We could also use image or chat, and our API is deployed, and we could use this now in every native application. Okay, this is how you go live, how you can finally use this in your application. I would really love to see my metric, because yeah, the metrics is actually cool. The metric looks cool, and the requests also shows up here. I didn't really go to index. I kind of accessed the API route, but anyway, not too important right now. What's more important is that everything of that API is now unprotected. And that is a problem. Now, our keys are only used in a server-side environment, but the API route itself is still unprotected. And you might or probably should take some measures to protect them. Now, one of the easiest ways that's I would say adding some sort of friction to it is making sure that the request has a specific key included. So what you could do, I want to just give you a super simple example. You could put in a file like this, which is called API auth. This is checking a request for a specific X API key header and checks if that key is equal to a key that we've set up in our env. Now, I can already hear you scream, if I have Expo public in here, it will be bundled in my application in public. Yeah, absolutely. It's not perfect. It is just really the first level of adding a bit of friction, as I said, to your API. So with this in place, you could now go into one of your endpoints, and the only thing you would do is you would pretty much just right in the beginning check if the request has an valid API key. Otherwise, you're gonna return the unauthorized function. It's pretty much like adding a middleware, and I think it works similar in Next.js. What works, of course, better is if you have user authentication in your application, then you can also plug this in your API routes here. For example, if you're using Supabase, you can easily check if that user exists, if that user has an active subscription or has reached the limit or anything like that. And that also makes it a lot easier if one of your users is abusing your API. You can easily block that user and figure out, okay, I don't want to allow that. Otherwise, other solutions could probably be some sort of rate limiting based on APIs or IPs that you implement. However, I don't know exactly how well this works with cloud functions. So again, not perfect, but our API keys are safe. Just the endpoint isn't perfectly safe. But you have to figure out what works for you. Okay, some have this as like a free trial and you can use the API. Some have it just behind an authentication. So really you need to tailor this to your needs, but keep this in mind that you somehow should make your API endpoints secure. Otherwise, everyone on the internet can use them. Alright, that's it for today. I think it's really cool to see how these things are really powerful together, and once you get the hang of them, it's almost like plug and play and just putting them together. The pieces come together, the API routes of Expo, now the Vercel SDK makes it really easy to talk to LLMs, and you can just swap out models in the future, like if Gemini becomes better, if OpenAI has a new version, you can easily swap them out in here and it just works. Plus, there are tons of other features in the SDK that we haven't even talked about, like tool calling. You can get back structured data describing exactly how the reply from the LLM should be, or even MCP server usage. So a lot of cool things to unpack. Let me know in the comments if you want to see a future video with some of these tools or an application with AI functionality that I should build for you on this channel. You can also find a link to the written version of this tutorial below this video where you can also grab all the code. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more epic videos in the future, and I will catch you in the next one. So until then, happy coding, Simon.